Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions, and a continued reading from a hyperliteral, extra heavy duty, professional grade translation of the Bible. Last episode we were at 414.33. That is, I thought this should have been broken up into, because they were different ideas and responses, into three different verses at 414. So backing up just a little bit with the idea, quoting from transition, normally called Cain, which is just an untranslated word there. Quoting from transition, "And from man's face and regard will I be hidden, and I will be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth." Of course. Same thing would happen to you if you were a very religious person and you became an atheist. Let's say you're a very religious person, you're working for, I don't know, Chick-fil-A, and all your friends work at Chick-fil-A, and everybody that knows you as a person who is a Christian working at Chick-fil-A, and you become an atheist. Do you think you're keeping that job? Do you think that you're keeping that friend group? No. In fact, people who transition from one belief system into another, not always, but many times, are completely dejected by friends, family, spouse. It could result in divorce, or at least in separation. You have children. Perhaps you don't see them for a while, or you see them in some broken way, for 3 or 4 years, and then maybe see them later when they're half grown and you missed much of their childhood sometimes, things like that. So do you become a vagabond when you greatly change your view of reality? Well, yeah, of course you would. And it will come to, in passage of time, or happenstance, that could be read happenstance, that everyone that discovers who I am will try to slay me. Now this just got really specific. The word slay here, although it is often should be translated as testify to the point of reasoning and a repentance. It's often used that way, but in this case, it means literally kill in this context, because what we're talking about here is when people discover the first to transition, the transitioner, or the beginning of the growth cycle of the Christ. So when he says in passage of time, that's when the prophecy happens. Everyone that discovers who I am, who discovers he is Christ, will try to slay me. Of course, this does not include faithful followers, but the general populace. And this will be true. So yeah, I'm saying this is part of that prophecy. I'm going to go ahead and reduce myself so you can see better. And I know that this thing streams better without lots of movie going on, lots of video. So hopefully it'll work well if it wasn't working well before. And the Elohim, or Jehovah's angels, said to transition, "Whoever slays transition, vengeance will be taken upon them sevenfold." And the angels set a mark upon transition, lest any finding him should kill him. Again, this mark is the same as the mark of the saved in the book of Revelation. Those who testify to Christ, that mark. This is not talking about any kind of a physical mark or blackness of skin for the sake of heaven and God above. It is not talking about blackness of skin. Oh my gosh. I don't know how people ever read that this way. Read this that way. Said that backward. But if you transition, you are obvious. because you're going to start saying different things. And, ideas like you will know the Christian by their love. A Christian should be loving, fruits of the Spirit. The fruits of the Spirit is this mark being referred to. Were you an atheist, you would not have this mark. You wouldn't have fruits of the Spirit. That's, of course you wouldn't. But once transitioning out of materialism and vanity, which it's calling materialism vanity, some of you viewing this may not think that is true, but once transitioning out of that, you are obviously marked. You think differently. You speak differently. Okay? So this is like the killer of Christ gets the express lane to hell. Okay. And we have a topic change. Last I checked, there is one person. And for that one person, should you want to read this document yourself at some other speed, or perhaps backtrack some and catch up to where we are in context, you didn't sign in, and thereby, and I respect your anonymity. I truly do. I'm not trying to press that whatsoever. But this pinned comment at the top of the chat is that document. You are welcome to it. It is yours. So take advantage of that if you like. If you wanted to clock in and make some, sign in and make some comments or questions, I would try to address your specific brain specifically. So we have a topic change here and no questions in the chat. Since the original text contained no divisions of actually parts of sentence, paragraphs, or chapters, I feel like wherever the topic changes, it should be a different chapter. So sometimes in this, I've begun a new chapter and it wasn't structured that way before. I hope this makes sense to you. Because of the differentiation in context, it does not change, in my opinion, it does not change topics where Christians normally think it does. So here we are going on with what I think should be titled The Circle of Life on Earths. Now, redeemed possession, that's a literal translation, redeemed possession through transition. That's Cain. Went out from the presence of the angels and dwelt in the land of wandering in exile. That's a phrase right there, wandering in exile, and we're going to see it again. And came eastward in the land of Jehovah's pleasure. That's what Eden actually means. And Cain, or redeemed possession, knew, and that knew right there means carnally knew, not had knowledge of, like the existence of, or knew personal things about the person. This is carnally knew his wife, and she conceived and bore, dedicated by inauguration. And redeemed possession builded an awakened city. Yes, specifically an awakened city. Not just any old city like the King James reads. And called out to the name of conspicuous position in the awakened city, dedicated by inauguration. I'm going to go over all of those right now within context. An awakened city means a people awoke. Okay? And this word city here also indicates that it has a barrier around it that the people inside cannot cross. Not that there isn't some standing on the wall of the city. That is to say, the entirety of the earth has a limit to how far we've discovered off of it. And almost everyone stays inside of that limit. That is to say, space. Okay? So that's what it means by city right there. And called out to the name of conspicuous position. Um, by the time this context is used several times in different ways, I'm sorry, by the time this word Shem, which literally means the name of conspicuous position, is used several times in several different ways, it becomes obvious that it's talking about the hero. This is the hero person, or in this case, Jesus Christ. So it actually reads, you could read it, called out to Jesus Christ in that awakened city, which was dedicated by inauguration. That is dedicated to God by inauguration, and induced into, was not naturally in that state. And we know that that is true. That either people are atheistic or agnostic, and then you have Christians and other theists. And of course, there's deism as well and other such things, that they need corrected on what those things actually mean. So having a wrong idea is the same thing as having no belief in the right idea. That's the same thing there. So that's how to justify dedicated by inauguration. Because of the name of conspicuous position, by transition into family building block sons. Oops, there should be an S right there. Who were, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I must have been exhausted when I did this part. Who were dedicated by inauguration. Okay, that is to say, the inauguration right there, testimony, and they overcome the beast by means of the word of their testimony, or the sword that proceedeth out of their mouths. And to dedicated by inauguration, that is those in that situation, were born those of fleet sequester. That means they were easily obtained, quickly obtained. And of the quickly obtained were those smited by God. And of those smited by God were those who are timely, who are an individual who is timely of God. And of that became the one of the powerful weapons user. Of course, powerful weapons here doesn't mean like, some kind of particle weapon or something futuristic. That's not the powerful weapon that the Bible is ever trying to describe, but more the strength of a testimony, the sword that comes out of the mouth. And it's going to expound on powerful weapons user. Took to himself 2 wives. The name of one, passed on ornament, and the name of the other, defense of shade from an image above. Passed on ornament, a beautiful, precious thing that doesn't perish with age and can be given, like the description of a slave, as an inheritance to the offspring of the master or sovereign and or Christ. And then the one who's defense of shade from an image above, referring to someone who is in the shadow of, that means they didn't immediately ascend, an image above, and or something that's large that casts a shadow over people, i.e. in this case, heaven. So that means they were impressed by the arrival of heaven and became a believer. So that's the 2 main kinds of people. People who ascended quickly and are a passed on ornament. Okay. And those who were impressed by heaven's arrival. And passed on ornaments bore the stream of water irrigating and bringing forth. Okay, so you have those already ascended, and they're having offspring, and those offspring are the stream of water irrigating and bringing forth. That is referring to us like a crop. Often, sometimes, often in the text, wheat and tares, meaning the crop and what is not good crop. In these ideas of farming of grapes, farming of grains. And he was the father of those that dwell in temporary tents of shining tabernacles, and are a purchased flock of sheep. That is, there's a price to be paid for this flock, and this flock resides in a temporary tent, which is a shining tabernacle. If you go back to the description of the Garden of Eden, you're going to see exactly these words. The shining tabernacle, meaning the earth, where is shining clean water and breathable air. So that's the temporary tent, and shining tabernacle is another way to say this planet. And of course, that tells you why it's a tabernacle. That tells you why it's temporary. I would think that it clears up all of those things. Oh, we have some visitors. Peace and respect, Doubting Thomas and Wild Heart and B, of course, and Mac. And that was all of a sudden. You guys just appeared out of nowhere in like 5 minutes or less. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to keep checking chat every once in a while, although I'm over here on this page so that I can move it. And of those purchased, their brothers, or his brothers, of the stream that leads away, is Father, quote unquote, or him who creates, all that handle the harp to thrum and the organ of breath. And we're going to find out those are not positive terms. The idea is going to be presented soon that if you handle the harp, you're playing an instrument, and the instrument has strings, which means attachment, and a metered distance from each other. So it's the idea of being metered and attached. And the word breath here in the Hebrew is the same as spirit. So they're actually being metered, and they are manipulating, or manipulate with the hand. The spirit is what this eventually becomes. Although I think right here it needed that explanation. And defense of shade from an image above, or those impressed by the arrival of heaven, will be brought of redeemed possession. That means they weren't believers before, but the one who transitioned or redeemed possession will be an instructor to them. He will bring them out. That is, the Jesus that they meet convinces them of what's going on and why and what is in the sky and what the intent of these beings are. And he's going to be an instructor of every artificer of brass. Brass meaning dull bell metal, or cheap, filthy dross, ideas like that. And also of iron, which is a reference to lean or choice, not loin. I can't put those two words together. Lean or choice olive, or iron, meaning that it is something clean and preferred. Okay, so he's taking them from the dross to that which is shiny and preferred, if that idea works for you. And the sister of you will be brought of redeemed possession, was named delightful loveliness. I don't know. That was awfully kind and very like nonchalant. Like, why do these females get to be labeled delightful loveliness when everyone else seems to be some kind of a pain in the butt? Maybe that's because females, at least in European culture, I know, are more free mentally than males are, and that they have a better ability to accept what is obvious and in their face, and they're more trusting of themselves and their intuitions, apparently, than males. And perhaps that's why, at least I think in European cultures or European descent cultures, that's fairly true. Okay, what's we got here? Does this Jesus point to Scripture to demonstrate what is happening. Very good. Yes. In fact, there are verses to exactly that effect. And isn't it interesting that Jesus might pick up the Bible and that Jesus might speak to the apostles more than once about giving the good news? Well, this is part of how I argue with standardized Christianity. How could Jesus speak of the gospel? He's still alive. So that's something I think is worth thinking about. And if that was not sufficient, please expound more. And powerful weapons user said to his wives, passed on ornament and defensive shade from an image above, hear my voice, ye wives of powerful weapons user. Hearken unto my speech, for I, myself, have slain a mature man. A mature man. Now, this is very different from young man, especially when you start looking into the etymology of these Hebrew words. A mature man is actually any adult, that just this one happens to be male. Someone who accepts responsibility, accepts truth, speaks in truth, never lies, and takes care of those that the person loves. That's mature. A young man, which is in that next line right there, actually means a young person who, like a lion's whelp or young lion, shakes their head violently and yells very loudly, trying to make a point and has absolutely nothing to say. Now, if you're not smiling, I won't know why, because we've all been young men who did that, and we've all seen young men do it. And that's precisely what they do. They get in these arguments when they don't know what they're talking about. They shake their head violently and they yell. So who is this mature man? And that's a huge compliment in the Bible to say someone is a mature man. It says it only about one character ever. I have slain a mature man to my wounding. Well, of course, because this is transition. Transition, having already volunteered himself to be killed, and or Jesus Christ, and it did wound himself. Well, yeah, he volunteered for it, and it killed him. And I have hurt a young man, and it hurt me. So this young man referenced otherwise the ultimate young man who speaks the loudest with the mouth and the voice of a lion, standing firm in his position and has no idea what he's talking about, is, of course, if you haven't already guessed it, the beast of Satan. So he's speaking about himself and the beast of Satan here. Now, if redeemed possession and or Cain will be avenged sevenfold, truly powerful weapons user 77-fold. So here we have the Father and the Son in the relationship already described. And the emotional animal knew his wife again. I don't know. Do I need to go over anything about 77-fold? Try to. Well, this is the way I look. I don't know. Don't try to look at it this way. That's dishonest. I'm sorry I said it. I look at it this way. If it is true, the story of the Bible is thought to be false, and that's one of these names in these lists. Thought to be a fool. And people dismiss it evenly, and it is to be avenged. That is the story of the Father that's already in the Old Testament and the New Testament is to be avenged. Then certainly the powerful weapons user, or the guy on the ground, the most recent Christ, the Christ for this planet, who appears in end times, he will be avenged and or justified 77-fold. Well, yeah, of course. Because he's a guy on the ground that they meet. All All right, moving on. No questions in chat. And the emotional animal, that's the word Adam in the English. The emotional animal knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name emplaced substitution compensation. I think any Christian would say that if there is someone who's emplaced as substitutionary compensation, they're going to come up with one name. For angels had appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. Okay? So this is talking about Adam and Eve, the first male and female in existence in the universe. And they again have child. And this child is this emplaced substitutionary compensation for, well, the only thing to be compensated of in the entirety of the Bible. There's only one thing. For angels had appointed to me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So it's the same situation again, referring back to Cain and Abel and talking about how this person is going to be suffering from a lack of understanding of dualism or denying their own personal spirit. That is to say, an anti-theist or atheist. Yeah, guys, Jesus doesn't start out as a Jew. Sorry to disappoint. He starts out as an atheist. And not a bad place to start, by the way, because you don't have presumptions. And in place substitution compensation, to him was also born a family building block. You know, this is the one that just did the job, right? And he called his name certain husbandman to desperately wicked mankind. Yes, I know that's a long name. That's the name that's actually in the text. And I think if I asked a Christian, who is that certain husbandman to desperately wicked mankind? They're going to, again, have only one answer. Then begat the desperately sick to gather like grapes and to call on the name of Jehovah. To call on the name of Jehovah is to call on the name of the one true God. To gather like grapes means to be in bunches like grapes. And the human population is throughout the Bible referred to as grapes, to be harvested. There's so many food references. I don't know why people aren't scared of this. And the desperately sick. Of course, according to the Bible, when we're separated from truth and we're living on this very limited planet and for a very limited time, we are desperately sick. And that's not even me talking about actual diseases and dysfunctions and birth defects and all of those horrible, horrible things. So written here is what I just told you. So I'm going to skip the blue part. I thought it would be handy for some at certain times, especially for the European descendant mind, that I do it very, very literally, just in case they weren't really catching on to this very colloquial usage of words and a very euphemistic kind of speech with lots of breaks in sentences and parts of sentence referring back to the first part of the sentence or some other paragraph. And if your brain don't dig that, personally, my brain feels really comfortable with it. I like it. It kind of sounds like Noam Chomsky. Checking the chat. Peace and respect, Ox. Thanks for dropping by, whether you stay or not. I understand that that's not always easy for you. Yeah, Ox, stick around a minute if you've never heard any of this before. Man, this is not what the original words are and their actual definitions and etymology. And the etymology, Christians make fun of me for using the etymology of the actual word and finding out where the word comes from and what that means. But I'll give you an example of why I think that's important. If I say to you, Ox, sitting in your living room or bedroom or desk or wherever you're sitting, please draw back your head. Well, you only have so many options as to what you think I might have meant, and then whether or not you actually perform it, that's totally up to you. However, if I said to an archer who's holding a bow and arrow, draw back your head, well, that's a completely different thing. That means there's a war going on and he's got a target and it's time for him to engage his target. Okay? But there's nothing wrong with saying draw back your head, meaning shoot at the enemy. All right? Or maybe wait for the command to shoot at the enemy, whatever it would be in that moment. But if you don't have the context of the word arrow as head, then you're not going to understand what it's actually getting at. So reading the Bible is a lot like reading a letter. And then when you don't have the context of what these words actually mean etymologically, then I think you're lost from the very go. From the very onset of it, it's already too late. You already have no idea what they're talking about. And this is a reasonable reason, a logical reason why people often reject the Bible, because it does not make sense as it's written in English. And the Jews actually know these words and what they mean, and the Jews laugh at the Christians. And perhaps that's exactly what the Jews think they have over the Christians, is because they don't hear things like the word Adam. They hear the red-faced animal. And they don't hear things like, oh gosh, what was his name? Powerful weapons user. What was powerful weapons user actual name? I did not write it down here. Anyway, they hear the translations, so they know what these things mean and they get the context. So when Jews claim they have a deeper understanding of the Old Testament than Christians who assign it value, I don't think they're joking. I think they really got an actual claim there. Ox, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be checking back every several minutes to address you personally if you have something that you have an inquiry about. Moving on then to the next chapter, the lineage of archangels and the types of us that ascend. This is the book of those brought forth from Adam, the emotional animal, in the time that powerful beings, in the English you would read that Elohim, but that does not mean God, begat mankind, in the likeness of powerful beings, begat them him. Yes, they're referred to as a singular male. I suppose that's like an expression of how cooperative they are or something like that. Male and female begat they them, and caused them to, this is interesting, they leave this completely out of the Christian Bible, and caused them to kneel and be lower. Why isn't that there? And called their name Adam, the emotional animal, in the time that they were begat. Okay, so now we have plural Adam. And what does it mean to be kneel or be lowered? Well, then obviously you have this potential to stand, and you're not standing. And it's going to go into more detail later. And if you don't like spoiler alerts, mute me for about the next 15 seconds, starting now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. Yeah, to kneel or be lower is to be made of the same pulverized material or tiny material, meaning, I think, genetics. We're actually extracted from angelic genetics, but we're limited. And then we found junk DNA. And I think junk DNA is exactly this limitation. It's not never used, although it doesn't show up ever in the fossil record, but it is a potential that has always been there. And I hope I did that quick enough. And the emotional animal lived, this 130 years is gematria. And the 130 actual numbers are irrelevant. I put them here just in case somebody didn't like that they weren't here. But what it actually means is a God-elected calling life, a life of being called and elected by God. So the emotional animal lived years of a God-elected calling life and begat in his own likeness and after his image, and called his name, the first one, and placed substitution compensation. And after he begat, and placed substitution compensation were years of an above perfected God-elected life. And he sired family building block sons and childbearing daughters. In other words, he had kids in a very, very normal way. You'll notice that he is ascended and having children. And all the days of him that turns red in the face, that he was quickened, were years of a transitioning God-elected calling life. And he passed on to something else. Now, in the Christian translation of this, you'll find that he died. It literally does not say that. It could be died, but then your context is ruined because he's living a really long life in heaven. Well, according to other parts of the story, you can't go to heaven, be perfected, and die. So that doesn't really work. So I think passed on is a better translation here because it doesn't agree with the rest of the Bible if it reads something else. Ox wrote, my only thing with the Bible is when someone uses it as a weapon. I'm sorry, Ox, I know you're right. And says it's the word of God. To me, it's more a guidebook, not a basis for belief. You know, actually, Ox, that's pretty darned reasonable of you. And I thank you for sharing that. Wow, I'm already over half an hour. Okay, so write any questions you got right now. We're going to wrap this thing up. It's very kind of you, Ox. I appreciate that. You know, by the way that I read it, I think there's only one intended reader for a set of instructions this specific. And who is that intended reader? Well, the one who can actually follow the instructions. Well, the Bible speaks of one who ever follows the instructions. He's a godly man. He's a man perfect. He is an adult man. He is, sorry, it's a he, but the world is sexist and needs a he preacher. And not everyone's as open-minded as the European descent people. Sorry. And women are able to hear men, but in many places of the world, men are not able to hear. I know it's sad, not able to hear women. That the intended reader would get all this, and the intended reader would be able to follow the instruction, and the intended reader would not be confused at all, nor would that intended reader be prejudiced and hateful and judgmental, and they'd be able to do all this stuff. Everyone else who's reading it, well, they're welcome to read it, but it is for them a loose guidebook that they're never going to actually complete. The Bible even says they won't. They will say that themselves, that they will not perfect the Bible in their own life. They won't, and we all know it. So what makes them think they're supposed to read it? Guidebook for a single. Well, very good, Mac. That was spot on, apparently, because I just said that. You make me laugh, bro. No, but that was very good. All right. So I don't see a whole bunch of questions popping up. We're over a half an hour. I didn't even mean to go this long. But I want to thank, obviously. Oh, okay. Well, I don't expect you to respect this, but I expect that eventually you would see that it's a continuous context that is perfectly moral, even within the highest standards of any human I've ever heard of. And I hope for that reason you might eventually respect it. Ox, I think you got a decent brain, and in that way, I respect you as much as I can. You know, a human being. You enjoy the way I interpret it, its words. And I think that's most of the problems today is lost understanding of how it was wrote. Yes. I don't think that's most of the problems today, except in Christian-controlled communities where they oppress others and justify their own personal and unjustifiable prejudices and tribalism and hatred of others. And they use the Bible to say, I'm right. And you couldn't get more wrong than that. There is no part of the Bible that says that's okay, and it several times says it's not okay. So how can a Christian go, oh yes, loving Jesus, love and empathy and respect for others, Jesus, 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 boy, I hate the gays. How in the hell do they do that? And think they're not crazy and actually think they're solid in saying something like that. Wow. Super two-faced. Well, that's what cognitive dissonance can do for a person. If ever you're thinking that, hey, maybe my life's too hard and maybe I just need to separate things out. So I think I'll take these things over here and put them in one category and treat them this way. And I'll take these other things over here and I'll put them in this category and I'll treat them this way. And I'll keep them completely away from each other. Well, welcome to cognitive dissonance, people. Welcome to Christianity in the modern world. Yeah, the etymology, Ox, of these words gives depth. And there's no useless word in the Bible, not one. There are no names of lineages of people in the Bible. That means absolutely nothing. But the translators thought it not interesting or necessary. And sometimes, actually all the time, it defeats their dogmatic view of the text and would ruin their churches if they translated the whole thing. So you want to know what I think? Why they didn't translate the whole thing? You want to know why? Because they couldn't. They couldn't. It put them out of business. And you know those preachers love a good business. And I think that's disgusting, frankly. And I can't respect that. All right, guys. That wraps up for this episode. And we'll start here the next time I got a few extra minutes to rub together. Peace and respect to you all. Wild Heart, Ox, Mac, B. Seems like there was a couple other. I want to respect everyone. My memory is not Doubting Thomas. My memory is not perfect. Okay. In fact, I don't know. People give me nice compliments. They're nice. I don't think I deserve them, actually, because I've been with me my whole life and I'm around me 24/7 and my brain is annoying. It forgets stuff all the time. It can barely keep track of appointments. I mean, not very good, actually. But anyway, thank you, everyone who came. Peace and respect to you all. Have a great night. And I want you all to know that I truly do look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Till next time.